Good evening. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. We're going to call the roll. We do not have the assistance of our clerk this evening, so I'm going to give it a go. We have Stephen Rhines, Jay Funling.
Hello.
Thank you, Jay.
On Zoom? Okay.
Macy Lee. We have Julia Maxwell on Zoom. We have Judith Steele. We have Brian McGuire. Tom Caldwell, myself. And one more. And Aman.
Aman.
Hello, Aman.
Peter Mott. Did you get Peter?
Tom, and Brian.
Thank you. And Peter's here?
Yeah.
Okay. We have 10 members present, so we have a quorum. Let's get started. So welcome everybody, those who are here and watching at home. Today we have a few items on our agenda, some of our typical end of year things. We have transfer from the school, transfer to the school committee is what we'll be talking about, end of year budget for fiscal year 25. We have several members of the school committee and our acting superintendent, Mr. John Phelan, here to present for us. We'll also be discussing the turnbacks to the treasurer, the end of the year for the Department of Revenue, and we have some minutes to approve. What I'd like to do is we have all our guests here. I'd like to have members of the school committee and our superintendent, whomever would like to come up. I see Amy Dexter here. Amy, just going to give you a shout out.
I think Tom said to us this week.
Brian, it should be on your email.
Yeah, it's from this morning, Brian. Right? I just printed it out. So. Yeah, I can definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, and other members of the school committee. Start.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us tonight. I have Mark Loring, who is the chair of the Finance Subcommittee. If I start losing my voice, I might ask Mark to jump in, but I think I'm good for a few slides. We have Interim Superintendent John Phelan, and then we have Nathan Hutto, who is also a member of the School Finance Subcommittee. And thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's a hot night, and you're winding up the end of your term, so we appreciate the time. We just wanted to come tonight to provide an update with the FY25 budget as we're closing out the year, and to come to the Warrant Committee with a request. So just to back up a little bit and provide a little bit of history, this is something that all of you know, and I think this presentation was provided to all of you. But a little bit of budget history for FY24 and 25. In May of 24, the fiscal year FY25 budget was approved. The school was appropriated $67,225,233,000. And then in July 1st of that year is when the FY25 school budget began. In July of 2024 is when there was recognized a fiscal year 24 deficit that was identified and addressed. And then in January 25 of this fiscal year, Assistant Superintendent Catherine Blake, who actually I should have said couldn't be here tonight. She had a prior engagement, so she can't be here. It's at that time that she identified a projected deficit as of June 30th, 2025 of $2.3 million. The issues that were noted were a continuation of the structural deficit within the school budget that had been noted also in FY24. In March and April of FY25, actions were taken to reduce the projected budget. Some of the things that were put in place we'll go into in more detail. But this, we were able to project a deficit of $700,000.
Sorry.
That's okay. project a deficit of approximately $700,000, but the school committee asked the select board for a $1 million reserve fund, recognizing that while we were still projecting a lesser amount as of March, we recognized that there were still several months through the remainder of the year, and we felt that the $1 million was probably more appropriate for what we needed. However, the select board allocated $700,000, and then this was approved by the Warrant Committee and town meeting. In May, during ongoing budget monitoring, the school department noted some unencumbered expenditures, which we'll go into in more detail in further slides, which pushed this projected deficit back up to $1 million. And in June, this additional $300,000 was recommended by both the Warrant Committee and the Select Board, and the town meeting approved the funds transfer into the reserve account of an additional $300,000. So as I noted, with this, we're going to review the history, but also the request. So the request that we're coming to you tonight with is to allocate the $1 million of the reserve account funds that were allocated through the use of free cash to the school department to close this deficit. This money was originally planned to be allocated to the school/town special education reserve fund in FY26 that was approved during town meeting.
And now you won't have to do that. If you could go back just one. You were gonna, is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
While we're on it, we go down the road too far and we can't remember where we're. So, without this, you might have had to use money from the 26 to plug this reserve account for FY26.
So the $1 million is free cash. That is,
Yeah, I'm all there.
Yeah.
But see, money was originally planned.
Yeah, so during the override planning discussions, originally the amount was to be set aside to what the town established was a special education, a town school special education reserve account, right? That would have oversight from the school committee and select board. And so that would be available starting in FY26. When the deficit was identified, what the school committee requested is that instead of setting that funds aside for FY26, the crisis with, most of the deficit within this year is special education related. So the request was to use that funding instead of putting in a reserve account for next year, use it to cover the current year deficit, because that also would have no negative effect on the school department allocation or any other department allocation next year if the override passed, which it did.
So if I'm reading this correctly, you do not have to touch this now for the 25 budget?
No, there's
Okay.
no, yes.
So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. As we noted earlier, we had prior requests, so we had requested originally from the select board that full $1 million allocation. As I said, that Katie was working aggressively to really try and close that gap. It had looked like we could get it down to, it was looking at about approximately $700,000. We still were hopeful that we could get it down to that amount. And so given that was the working number at that time, that was the amount that the select board had approved for allocation. And then similarly, following that presentation, we came to the Warrant Committee and did a full presentation on the projected deficit. Since that original $2.3 million was projected, we were able to reduce that by as much as 56%. So as we said, down from $2.3 million down to $1 million.
Actually,
There we go. Some of the things that we've gone through this with you guys before, but just to review a number of the actions that took place earlier in the third quarter were purchase order freezes. There was a hiring freeze. There were allocation of we allocated a portion of the custodial services salaries to a first food service account. Excuse me, I can't speak tonight. We reduced consolidated facilities purchase orders. We addressed, there was an issue with the water bill that got addressed and that piece was reduced. There's a circuit breaker supplemental funding for transportation reimbursement that is moving towards its final approval in the State House. And then we utilized other offsets such as community schools, Medicaid, Medicare, and building use. So those help to reduce those things. And all of those are appropriate uses of those funds. Just want to make sure that that's clear and they follow all of the guidelines. But we were able to utilize different offsets to reduce that number from that 2.3 million.
Just here, can you take a question?
I have a quick question about the water bill.
Yes.
Were you reimbursed for the unanticipated increase or I remember there was an issue with the water.
70,000?
Yeah, it was like an issue with the water bill where you were overcharged. Did you actually receive the funds from the state for that overcharge?
It's from the town.
From the town,
Yeah, so it
okay.
was the town, so
Okay,
part of it was allowed to be reduced within
Yeah.
the current year obligation of the bill we needed from
Right.
the town. There's some things that were charged in actually prior fiscal years that couldn't go to us, but will go to free cash
Okay.
for the town because it was an overpayment due to a meter issue.
Okay, that's right. Did they replace the meter for the reading?
I believe so.
Okay.
Look over here at Amy, because I
All
know.
right. Now, the reason I ask is I want to just make sure that next year you're squared away.
Yeah. Right.
And not end up with an overcharged water bill and then causing a deficit again in your budget. I mean, not that it's like a big part of it, but it's every penny counts.
Every penny counts.
So how much did you get back from the town for the water bill?
60?
Yeah, it was around that.
Right, yeah. It's
60,000? Okay,
Sounds like the water bill at my house.
that's a lot of water. Okay,
Yes.
so, thank you. I sorry to interrupt. I was just
No, no,
curious.
that's okay. Are there any other questions on actions that were taken before we move on to moving forward? Or is it
No,
history?
Yeah, I don't understand. What's the offset on Medicare? What is-
Oh, yeah,
what is
I remember that.
Yeah, so the school department receives some funding through Medicare for certain health-related programming and costs. And so that is a separate account similar to the community schools or the building use account that can be drawn down on. And so we are drawing down on that more. That was also something that was drawn down on at the end of FY25. So similar to the circuit breaker, there are reserves that can build up if you don't use the full Medicare funding in order to provide you buffer in future years. That was fully drawn down on at the end of FY24, so there were no reserves left. But then FY25, the original projection was that we weren't going to use as the full 100% of the Medicare allocation to help rebuild that. And it was determined we had to use the full amount to reduce this deficit.
And that's the same with community schools and building use. It was reserved issue.
Yeah, community schools and building use are, again, funds that are gathered through payments, so building use is reservations of the field house or field or whatever else for sports, and so those are fees that are used, and so we can pull into those to charge for some facility use. Community schools is obviously for the after-school programs, break programs, and so those are a little different in that they're not funds that come from the state, they're funds that come from users who, families that pay into those programs in order to utilize them, and they build up a reserve over time. And so it's a chargeback between those programs and the school department. And so Katie, within her monitors uses those. Again, those were also used to close FY24 much more substantially and, reduce those significantly. And so we are leaning on them again to try and reduce this deficit as much as possible.
Just begs another question. Like the after school, does that pay for itself? What do you charge?
Yeah, and right now it's more than paying for itself. We're actually leaning on it, and this is an example. We're like pulling more from it than we probably should be. But yes, that the community schools program has no impact on like the allocation from town meeting for the school department. It's self-funded in terms of the fees.
I have a question. Yes. This Medicare reimbursement that you get for certain health related, what if you use it all and still need more? Where would you go for that money?
It's an annual allocation. Can't remember if it's a reimbursement or a...
It's a reimbursement, so every time a student goes to the nurse or utilizes maybe a speech service or occupational therapy service within the schools, we record that and submit it to the federal government, and the federal government provides that Medicaid reimbursement over time. So those funds come in and out with the federal, as the student uses the service, and as we as a district report that to the Medicaid federal budget folks, then that money comes in over the course of each fiscal year.
And you're not limited in any way? Do you reach a level point where they say we're not going to give you any more?
They give you a certain amount per every, I won't call it a transaction. For every service you deliver, you get a certain amount of money, so you're not restricted. It's basically was a program that was started about 15, 16 years ago in Milton where it was services that we were already delivering to our students that Medicaid decided to cover, and we just applied, and now our staff put in the time to actually record it all, put it into the computer and submit it monthly, and we get reimbursed monthly or quarterly.
They don't shut you off thinking you've reached a cap. There's no cap.
I don't think there is any cap.
Thank you.
I also think there's, did you intend to say Medicaid and not Medicare? Because it says Medicare.
I
Because,
believe it's-
yeah, Medicare is over 65, Medicaid, yeah,
Medicaid,
okay. So it's
That's a
Medicaid.
good catch, thank you.
It's my line of work, that's the only reason I know.
No more questions about that issue?
Thanks.
Great, so I'll talk about just going over some of the cost drivers of the deficit that we presented before and some of the newer ones. So again, just to hit on this kind of solely, the primary impact cost driver of the current year projected deficit is due to budget issues where the allocation did not reflect prior year expenditures. Hopefully this is not a surprise, and this aligns with kind of what we have said repeatedly at presentations with y'all, of the public presentations, town meeting, et cetera. So this is a slide we presented before. I'm not going to read it in detail because I think y'all have seen it, but again, it talks about kind of that structural deficit and some of those examples from just two of the cost drivers, use substitutes and utilities, in terms of what the budget was, what were the expenditures for that year, and you can see that over the last 3 years, just how those two things were out of line. And so between these two line items themselves, substitutes and utilities, and also this substitute expenditure ended up going up even a little bit beyond this. Within the most recent projections, that's $1 million right there within the deficit. So that is the largest cost driver of this, is really that issue. Here it is also with special education. That's the other piece that is a primary cost driver, different special education costs related to tuition, transportation, contracted service. You can again see kind of the difference between what the budget amount, what the expense was over the last several years, and how those two things have been out of line. Those are issues that we have fixed going into FY26. Again, that was a primary part of the conversation with the override of we need to reset these budgets to reflect what the actual expenditure is. That is what it is costing. That's why the override was, for us, was the 5.7, but was not a needs-based budget. It was even less than level service, because the goal was to right-size these and no longer be in a situation where we found ourselves last year or this year. So that is the primary kind of issue and the primary action step we have taken to try and address that. Mentioned this, but again, those specific line items, the three biggest cost drivers are special education, transportation, substitute coverage, and utilities. Those are the three biggest ones. So that is all information we shared previously. Want to talk about the cost drivers since Q3. When we were in Q3, we had the $700,000 projection that has gone up. And so it's gone up by about $300,000. And so want to share about why that is. So there were kind of unknown costs by the finance department due to kind of a lack of use of purchase orders in some cases. So, with the way the finance process works is if you want to spend money, typically you'll go to the office, they will build a requisition that will get approved, that will create a purchase order. That purchase order is then kind of a promissory note that's sent to the vendor, the person you're going to buy stuff for, to say, hey, we want to buy this. They will give it to you. That all happens before a check is cut, right? So the school department receive the goods and the services before they pay for them. But the PO is the way the company feels okay about providing those without payment. So there's a lot of stuff that is happening, a lot of promises or encumbrances is what is called, of money that we know will be spent, but it's not actually out of the bank yet. And so that is the pace that purchase orders allow you to track. So when things are not done through the purchase ordering process, they are not encumbered. So that money is not known that it is going to be out of the door. And so that was a concern Katie raised, and why we had originally asked for a little bit of buffer within the projection of the 700 for that $1 million request to select board. And some of that has come to pass, where there are things that have come up that were unencumbered general expenditures. That's the 132,000 line. A couple examples of those are the calculus project. The district pays a physician every year to oversee allow you to provide over-the-counter medications to students like Tylenol or things like that with parental permissions, translation services. These are some of the things that were things that we have to pay for, we have agreed to, but they did not go through the encumbrance process, creation of the purchase orders. They were unknown at the time that Assistant Superintendent Blake did the projections. So these are just things that she did not know, and therefore the projections were off by that amount. Substitute coverage is another one that's been a cost driver, that has continued to be a cost driver. We were hopeful we were able to implement some processes to help contain those, and we're not able to contain them as much as possible. Homeless foster transportation was just an unexpected situation where a family became homeless, or the kids were placed in foster care, one of the two, I can't remember. And that is a mandated transportation service. We were required to provide that in terms of direct home to school transportation in those situations, regardless of where they live. We are obligated to provide them transportation to the kind of school of origin during that kind of difficult time, and that is a mandated cost we have to provide. So that was that. Yes, please.
Would that be for more than one family, that amount of money?
That amount of money specifically was for one family, but we would be required to do that for any family that was in that situation. That was just a new family that came in that was not built into our budget.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Is that for one quarter, 12,000?
Yes, that family does not live in the town. They actually live somewhere else, and we're responsible for the transportation from the town, from their current homeless facility to their school, door to door.
That seems like a lot of money, am I wrong, for like 3 months?
Transportation is a lot of
It's
money.
day-to-day, door-to-door, and I believe the other town was at least 35, 40 miles away.
It's $1,000 a week,
Yes,
200 a day.
yes.
Yeah.
It is a lot of money.
You do Uber or something? Yeah, cheaper.
Has that been alleviated, this particular cost for quarter four?
The funding for transportation in general,
For this particular family, have they found permanent housing?
I do not know the
You
answer
don't
to that
know.
question right now.
Obviously, the cost is ended when the school year ended.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
It's hopeful that
And
we'll
there
find
could
it.
be another family.
Right.
It could be an ongoing.
Yeah. A lot of these are things that, again, an unexpected foster student is hopefully never happens, but it will, and those things can come up. And most budgets, again, these are things that a budget should be able to kind of flex and adjust for. The issue is that we were so tight already with trying to create a tight projection and lower costs, and with Katie within what she was doing to trying to control the projected deficits, that there's just no wiggle room. So even the coach's stipend is another one. Katie was projecting that to see a little bit of savings within that. It ended up being $44,000 over her projection. That was still within the athletic department's budget. So it's not like the department itself went over budget, but she was projecting some savings that we did not see. And so therefore, there's nowhere else for that to go other than to sit on top of the deficit, because that is where we're at. Yes, please.
In a normal year budget, you have this transportation built into a normal year budget.
Correct.
You,
You have buffers built in.
right, and you may or may not use that.
Correct.
I think.
And if you don't use it, you carry it over, hope to kind of have a little reserve for unanticipated situations.
There is a transportation revolving account.
Revolving account.
That is mostly utilized for how we collect fees for our large school buses and how we pay those bills. So that revolving account usually has, because it collects money over fiscal years, then that's why it's a revolving account. For the funds for special education transportation or for our homeless and foster transportation, that would be in the special education transportation line.
Okay.
That could be utilized for different special education services. If in the end we had more on that one line item, we might transfer that to another special education service delivery line. So we would utilize that, and/or it would be brought back to a revolving account.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question? Just, you have the coach's stipends, it's 44K over projection, and kind of a smaller question to a bigger issue. Is that a previous year versus actual?
Yeah, I believe what Assistant Superintendent Blake did was, when she was doing the projection, took what we had spent in the fall season and rolled it in, and again, looking for ways in which we could find savings where maybe there was again, as she's looking through this and we're trying to cut this $2.3 million budget of like, maybe there's some additional buffer within this athletic department budget. We only spent X amount in the fall, well, maybe we'll spend X amount in the spring. Spring came in at Y amount, about $44,000 over. So again, that like fell within the athletic department budget, but it was just greater than what she had assumed within the projection as she was going through.
In your spring stipends, because there's more sports for both boys and girls teams, that's why the number's over. Fall has less sports, therefore less coaches stipends. Spring has more sports teams, therefore more coaches stipends, and that was when Katie just rolled over, I'll take the fall number and put it into the projection as a placeholder. The actuals that were actually in there would have been more because there's just more teams in the spring season.
I was of the thought going with the numbers that they're, like, everyone just kind of got a bump, and we never saw, but...
No, I think this is actually that the fall season always costs a certain amount, winter costs a certain amount, spring's always a little more because there's just more sports being conducted at that time.
Thank you. You answered the question. Thanks.
Last one is the salary encumbrances, just to hit on that. So again, I think we shared previously that our financial system does not have an ability to project salary costs for the year, encumber salaries. And so Assistant Superintendent Blake did that manually. For salaried employees, that's fairly easy and accurate process, right? You know what somebody's annualized salary is. This adjustment is primarily driven by differences within Assistant Superintendent Blake's projections for hourly employees and actuals. So again, overtime or things like that, just the number of hours that some hourly folks put in can be more variable. And so the projection she had didn't account for all of them. Another piece that she shared of why that 100,000 piece was around leaves. Some staff members who, again, just did not have some information about who was on leaves when they're coming back, costs associated with that, things that are HR drivers. That has been a pain point for us within this year that Interim Superintendent Phelan will talk about in a second. But those are kind of why the 100,000. I will say, kind of in Katie's defense on these like salary encumbrances, her number was off. However, we have a $67 million budget, 80% of that is salary. That's about $56 million. She's off by 100,000. That is a lot of money. It's 0.19%, so it's less than 0.2% in terms of what her projection was off. But obviously, again, our situation we find ourselves in right now is that this is 100,000 that is pushing the projected deficit up. Yes.
To give an example of hourly employees in the system.
Custodians are hourly employees. Some of our HRS employees who are administrative assistants are hourly.
Okay.
Our Unit D paraprofessionals and aides and BCBAs that work with our students that are not Unit A teachers, but they're paraprofessionals would be hourly employees.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on these?
Anybody online have any questions?
Ron needs to be promoted. Ron needs to be promoted to panelist.
You promote Ron, see ya. Please.
I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Are we waiting for Ron?
Oh, you can ask.
Is his hand raised?
Yeah, the coaches, I don't know if you answered this already, I'm sorry. I apologize if I did. Coaches stipends, the 44,000, was that over, what was it to act last year? Do you know, was it the same amount or was it over last year?
So I would suggest that the hourly, the stipends for coaches are in the contract, so they're known numbers. And what we explained a little earlier was that Katie just rolled in the placeholder for fall. So that they are known, stipends are known figures, they're right in the contract. So they have, I don't think they have changed.
So it was the same, it was the same last year?
It should be about the same as last year. They don't go up every year with the contract. They stay stagnant unless they're altered by the negotiation process.
Ron, did you have a question?
No, I was trying to get promoted, but thank you.
Okay.
All right, and then we'll quickly Share this text-heavy slide, which I apologize for. I just pulled this one because we've shared this one previously. These are best practices implemented, strengthened, things we've highlighted. I put, again, that top line in bold, just to emphasize again, we think that the work that Assistant Superintendent Blake and others did on the FY26 budget is the thing that most sets us up for success to not be in front of you next year. But there are other things that we have talked about that will be implemented, are being implemented, have been implemented, and they're on this list. One thing I want to highlight that we really haven't talked about as much previously, but it kind of is an update, is this hiring of 0.6 FT HR director. This year we had a 0.4 FT HR director, Glenn Pavlicek, who left us in the February, I believe, January, around that time. And so just the lack of that role has really resulted in some cost drivers, some that you see within the salary encumbrances related to kind of some HR functions that it's been really challenging with not having kind of staff there. So John has plans for that, and he'll speak on that for a second. Just the last point is this, again, slide we've shared previously on just some of the initiatives with the town, with the select board that are moving forward. I know on the Joint Town Finance Committee, that has been discussed kind of several times at the select board meeting, so that ball is in their court in terms of establishing. I think they'll do that at a upcoming meeting. And then the consultant is something that the RFQ went out. They've been getting some proposals back. We're waiting on that to close, and we'll review, soon we'll try and give some feedback with the town administrator and his team to select a good consultant. So that is moving forward, and we're excited about that. I'll turn it over to John to speak more.
So thank you, Mark. Just wanted to say out loud that the work that's already happening in the month of June in preparation to close out FY25, but more importantly, what are we doing moving forward to ensure that best practices are put in place to reassure the confidence in how we expend the taxpayers' dollars is already happening. There are budget issues in strategies that Assistant Superintendent Blake has already taken that I appreciate. I want to say out loud, Assistant Superintendent Blake could not make it with a family commitment. She has worked tirelessly for the last 6 months to identify this gap, look to shrink this gap, and has done a fantastic job. So I really want to applaud her for this. We have already met with every major spender within the school department, i.e. who has a budget and who has the ability to encumber funds and sign POs. We've already showed them their budget for FY26. We have already talked to them about encumbering all the appropriate expenses, so we know exactly where we are in that budget line. That includes athletic director, special education, and our facilities department, who are the bigger folks. We've also met with building principals and our curriculum directors to also set the tone for, this is the budget for FY26, here's what you have to spend, we want you to allocate resources appropriately, you can't go over this amount. We have every curriculum director notifying everyone through memos about every single purchase that they make that hits all different schools' budgets. So everything is recorded actively in memo form, so Katie can have an archived document to go to ensure that she knows where that money went and why it was pulled out of, say, a high school account or a middle school account for math or for English. This is all going to be paper-driven, so it's all recorded and codified, so we know exactly where every dollar goes. The other part of this, and we spoke to a little bit, is that the lack of a human resource position being filled full-time last year and only part-time for half the time this year has really created communication gaps around how it interacts with budget. So when we look at things like adjustments to salary, encumbrances $100,000, or why is subs so high, what does overtime look like, and why is it being expended in the way it is? We will look at all of those, and we've already met with the principals. I had a leadership meeting this morning. All of those things will have to be done with approval and in memo form. So again, we're codifying everything, and we know where every dollar is going. There's no, oh, I had someone work 2 days over the summer, now I want to pay them sometime in September. You will write the memo in August when they work. I will approve the work, then the person will work, and then we'll pay them afterwards. So we'll be encumbering as much as we can. We will be codifying everything with paper memo, and we are really looking forward to the year being very tight from a financial perspective. Secondly, we did review every single opening for staff this year that came about from the end of the school year to now. We are only approving filling positions that we feel are essential, that are student-facing, and we're actually having the principals and the curriculum directors look at whether or not some positions should be filled or could be paused them for 1 year, because we do know that we want to make sure that we have any leeway we can, that even though a school has bottom line authority to expend money from a different line, if we can hold off on a few positions this year, we'll only build a few dollars that we can use for unintended expenses and create that buffer. So we are doing that analysis now, and we will be deciding to probably not fill a few positions in order to be able to have those funds available for any kind of emergency through the year. So as I said in my first school committee meeting, if you voted for the override, thank you, we appreciate it, and we will absolutely shepherd the money well. And if you did not vote for the override, we appreciate it, that you know that we heard you, and we will be shepherding your dollar appropriately. We will be expending the taxpayers' dollar in the appropriate way. We take this very seriously, and we will come in on budget in FY26. There's no doubt in my mind.
Superintendent Finley, can I follow up the question? This was a subject from the Warrant Committee, even going back to last year. Are there any, and I think you very briefly touched on it, just in terms of kind of that summer work, get paid later. Are there any other changes in the hiring practices that you can outline for us, just generally across the department?
Sure. So every hire in the last 2 years has been more of a building-based hire. So I'm pulling that back, that all hires will be approved by me and the salary line will be approved by me. So what we do is we have teams of people interview a pool of candidates, then there's 1 or 2 finalists that the principal will have, and then those 2 candidates or 1 candidate will come to me. I literally did it yesterday, and I would show them the chart. I would see where they sat on the salary scale. I would sign that, initial it, and I would put that in the personnel file. So I will be doing all of those for this hiring season. That's something that the HR director would do with me in the future years, but because that position's vacant right now, I've taken on that role.
But that's a dual position that you'll be working with.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of this work, we're a small office, so HR really interacts with my role, obviously, and Katie's role. And the assistant superintendent, who's will be a new one, will be in place this year as well. When they're doing things like professional development and all those things, they also overlap with personnel, and that overlaps the budget. So it's a pretty tight office, but we have to be able to work well together and communicate well, and then codify things in writing so everybody's on the same page with what the expenditures are.
Thank you, excellent. Any questions from at home? Judy?
You got anticipated money from the state.
We haven't received it yet, but yeah.
I mean, it's not in your hands, but it's as good as. It's coming.
Yep.
You're not going to pull it back. Can you tell us the amount that you got from the state, please?
It's around 470, something around that. So essentially, the state was funding about 40% of transportation reimbursement. And the state should be reimbursing districts 75%. The original FY25 budget didn't allocate enough to cover the 75%, and so that's why it's 40%. So this supplemental funding is additional funds within FY25 to increase the reimbursement for all districts around the state to the 75% reimbursement amount. And so the 470 is just Katie's calculation. Like, that is what the difference is between a 40% reimbursement and a 75% reimbursement for Milton would be.
Okay, so this really isn't, yippee, I can do anything I want with this money. It is reimbursement money for a specific purpose. Now what will you do with it when you get it? You've already paid out the money, now they're giving you it back?
Yes, the money's already been paid out, so it is a reimbursement. The money is coming to fill the 2.3 million. It's part of that is the big puzzle piece that fills the $2.3 million deficit.
Okay.
Right.
It's
going into
FY25 funds.
keep plugging that hole, keep plugging that hole.
Yeah, that was when we came back in March. That was one of the things we talked about, the things we're doing, PO freeze, hiring freeze, the circuit breaker supplemental reserve. At that point, that was known that was the goal of the legislature. We weren't 100% that it would go through, but we've been monitoring that throughout the time. As you said, it's now been approved by the Senate, the House. It was in the governor's budget. The conference committee approved it. And so just, I think there's a couple more things, but it will come through.
And when it comes back to you, where are you going to put it?
We're gonna put it
I know
to-
that.
We're going to put it to fill.
I kind of think like when money comes back to me that I spent out, I
So it-
don't go out and buy a new car or something.
Yeah, no, it is just to balance it will be used to balance the FY25 books, as is the
As
same as
needed.
this $1 million allocation, right?
Okay.
Between those two things, those are two big pieces to fill what was the original $2.3 million projected deficit, right? So it's the combination of the additional revenue and the shrinking of costs are the two things to kind of close that deficit.
Thank you.
So Mark, I had a question. So just running some math, I could be wrong. So if we approve the 300, you'd have the 700, which the select board it's already been approved for you.
No.
No?
No,
Million?
the 700 and the 300 have both been approved by town meeting to the reserve account, which is under yours.
Right. So if we move the 300, right, so, okay.
Y'all haven't moved any money to our department because we didn't
Yeah.
ask you, we didn't want you to until we kind of knew where we were getting.
Thank you. So it could net out at $1 million. And then with the monies coming back from the state for the transportation, you'll still have a net loss of what, about 900? You said 2.3, isn't that 1.4 you'd have?
Yeah, so again, it's a combination of additional revenue that we're getting through, requesting through the reserve account, additional revenue from the state, and shrinking costs through PO freezes, the water bill issue, right, the hiring freeze. So it's the combination of those two elements. It's
Do a summary of those areas you're trying to cut. I saw the list you had up there, but I'm looking for, what is that list going to be, right? So if you're going to cut from 2.3 down to as low as you can go, right, and then balance it out with the state returning money, so I'm just wondering, what are you going to cut? I mean, you've got POs now. The end of the fiscal year is done, what, in a month? So is that about right? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, so sorry.
No, so that 2.3 has been cut, so I think the 2.3, through all of those efforts that we talked about, have brought that down to $1 million.
To $1 million.
With that, so, yes, and so the deficit that we now have is $1 million, and that's.
Okay. Okay. That's what I was trying to understand, where that 2.3 was. I was trying to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah,
And a transfer.
The circuit breaker funding is that,
Yep.
that additional piece. That's that, and then the $1 million is the.
Got it. Got it.
So all of those other pieces have been accounted for.
That helps me. Thank you.
So the transfer of the 7 and 3 will clear the deficit,
Right.
essentially.
And-
That's, I mean, that's.
Right. And then the action, the 7 actions, rate actions they have there offset it down from the 2.3 to get it to the $1 million.
Correct.
Correct? Yeah. Thank you. That's what I thought. I was trying to connect that. Thanks.
And you're going to exercise these actions in the new fiscal year as well, right? To ensure that there is no
We're not going to
deficit
have a
next
purchase
year.
order freeze.
Yeah.
And again, the hiring freeze is done.
Okay.
We are analyzing every new hire. We're not adding any FTEs to the budget. We're only analyzing the current FTEs that were moved into the FY26 budget. And if any vacancies occur due to folks resigning or retiring, we are looking at every single one of them. And we have up to 35 positions right now that are quote open in the district, which is the traditional movement in a school district this size. We've already identified at least 2 positions that we think that we could pause. Doesn't mean that we don't need them, but we're asking ourselves the question, could we pause those services because they're not direct to students? And could we use those dollars just to hold in FY26 to make sure that we can get through the year without coming back to the Warrant Committee? We'd like to leave those positions in the budget while we start to reflect on what FY27 could look like. But we're going to be very conservative in our approach to the FY26 school year.
Are you going to prioritize the positions such as those that are teachers versus administrative positions?
We have the actual 2 positions that were in mind. One's an administrator and one is a position that goes to many schools for professional development and support of teachers. Those are the 2 examples that we have now.
Just make a comment.
Sure.
I love that you have a strategy. I've been on the Warrant Committee for 3 years. This is the best strategy I've heard from the superintendent. And I just want to say thank you. It's exciting to see you're laying this out. It's a vision, how you're going to go about it. And you've got milestones to get there. It's pretty awesome. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Agreed.
It's awesome. I
I've only
mean,
been 1 year, but.
yeah.
Can I ask some questions? Thank you. It's not, so the principals, one of the things you said was the principals are going to be responsible for the budget of their schools, individual schools, right? So that's huge. Thank you. It looks like you went through, from the comments on the warrant committee last time, you went through the, you added all those items that were in from the April town meeting? May town meeting, I'm sorry, May 5th town meeting. It looks like you added all those, right? Like you, seemed like you acted on them, but no?
In terms of the best practices implemented?
Right.
So,
It sounds like you addressed them, because that was one of the questions at the town meeting, right?
This list was, this list existed prior to that town meeting, so some of these we had gone through. I think there were additional things that we talked about as far as possibly what that tri-board looks like. I'm trying to see if there's some other things. There were some areas that we did address, but I think that I think we were working on a parallel path, and some of the things that we had discussed that you had brought up, we had been working along on the parallel path, but definitely went back and reviewed it and took additional things into consideration.
and some of those things came up in conversations with the warrant committee, school subcommittee, right, which we talked with back in December, talked in January, had, Lori obviously was at many
Right,
school
yeah,
finance
so it's all,
So these are, I think we've
Cool.
tried to have ongoing conversation with this body and appreciated any and all input and questions and support that y'all have given us. So I certainly think that the work of the warrant committee has
it looks
informed
like
some of
you
these
did
practices.
do most of them, but I was wondering if there's any that you missed, because it's like 12 items here, okay? But if there was any that you said, no, we didn't want to do that, but if you've addressed it at any meetings. Like they talked about engage a CPA firm to conduct periodic review. They talked, the other one was like HR, human resource personnel system that accurately tracks employees by location, position, and funding source. Like that's one of the recommendations. I don't know if you talked about these.
So again, we talked about them
Some of them.
originally in the conversation, and some of these things, like the issue of the HR systems and things. Those are things that we are expecting will come up within the conversation with the consultant, the best practices consultant, because some of those systems need to make sure they talk between the town and the schools.
Yeah.
So the schools kind of going off on their own, doing something is not going to be that helpful. So so I think there's still more that we're hoping to learn and implement in collaboration with the town and that consultant, and with the work of the tri-board in terms of just how we think about reporting and engagement with the public and each other, and just make sure we are, again, just strengthening these practices throughout the year.
Yeah, that's great, actually. Thank you for that. I just had some other questions. Special education. You said that last year, the last meeting, you said the population went down. Special ed students went down. I don't know if it's gone down, but the actual's actually going up, it looks like.
The actual expenditures.
Actual expenditures,
Yep.
right. Like this population's going down, but the expenditures went up. And I guess my question is, do you know why? Is there a way to put student numbers to cut this or something?
So the question is, if the numbers are going down, why is the budget going up?
Right.
I think there are some things where I'm not clear on the numbers, to be honest with you, how much they've gone down. I know there are some things that still go towards special education costs that don't necessarily reflect a student being in special education, and that would be around that evaluation process. So if a student is referred for special education, if somebody, a parent or a teacher or whomever refers them, they have to go through an evaluation process, which then brings into account contracted services. So a school psychologist or a speech therapist or an occupational therapist, they have to go through all of those evaluations. And in some cases, we have people in-house who can do that. If there are a higher number of students referred at a particular time, we might have to contract those services out, which increase our costs. And so, say there are 30 students who are referred for special education, maybe only 10 of those qualify for special education. You still have to evaluate all 30. Does that make sense? So those costs still go towards special education?
So there might be different levels of special education. That might
Absolutely.
be-
So, yeah, I mean, you could have a student who's medically complex, and that can be a much higher cost because you have medical expenses involved with it. There could be students who are in special education, but they're getting reading instruction, and that could be it, or just speech and OT. So the needs vary by every student. So there's not a sort of a cookie cutter service plan per student. So each student, some student might have one service, some might have multiple services, and that would contribute to the cost. I think the one other thing to note is, I think it was 3 years ago, so I don't know if you're looking specifically at district students in special education. So we have students who are in district, and then we have students who are out of district. So they go to special education schools outside of the district. Those costs, I think 3 years ago, increased by 14%. The tuition alone increased by 14%. So out of district tuition. So the state sets the rates for the state-approved schools, and so their tuition increased substantially. So that was a big hit to a number of budgets. So it wouldn't necessarily reflect this year versus last, but if you looked at the cost from this year versus 3 years ago, and those out-of-district costs would be substantially higher. I don't know if there's more you wanted to add to that.
It is a very, it's not a dollar for dollar special education student per cost ratio. Each child has its own IEP where they get services that they deserve, and some of them, as Amanda said, could be just limited to 1 or 2 services, and some students could have 4 or 5. So the number of students doesn't really always determine the number of services and the expenditures associated with that cost in that department.
Okay, probably hard to budget.
Correct.
Okay. I remember this from a previous meeting, but, and I think Katie might have brought it up at one of the finance meetings, about substitute teachers went way up this year, past year. Is that accurate? And I guess that was one of my questions. I don't recall what the reason was, but why did that happen? Do you know why?
Yeah, you're 100% right. Substitutes is a primary cost driver. One of the reasons it's been shared is that it is harder to find external subs to cover. That has been something that's been very challenging for most districts. External subs are actually cheaper than paying staff who are in district, right? Paying teachers to cover, right, and give up a prep period and cover, or pay building subs to take on, whatever those kind of agreements are. Typically, those are more expensive to use internal staff. A lot of times, from my experience, the impact on kids is better because those are staff who are ingrained in your building, know the kids better, know the curriculum better, things like that. So from a student learning perspective, that can often be better, but from a financial perspective, it can be more expensive. And so the other is just...
So they were in-house teachers, that's the reason?
Yeah, so when you can't get an external substitute teacher to come in, you would basically, if a teacher has a 7-period schedule, they teach 5 periods, they have 1 planning period, and they have 1 period off. We would actually take one of those periods that they were supposed to be doing their prep, and there's a contractual amount of money for that period, $27 or $32 that we would pay them. So if you multiply that by the 7 periods of what that teacher would teach, that's more than the cost of a daily sub. So when that happens over time, that accumulates to a higher amount of money that would be expended on that. So to limit that, the district has hired building subs. So every school has a sub every day, no matter what, because they'll cover the first teacher out. And that has helped to a certain degree. But I would say that the amount that I'm looking at on slide 11 of, the variance of the expenditure in 25 was about $1 million. It would be nice to get that back down around 900,000 or so. So we're going to work with a couple of with our principals to find out if there's any way we can reduce that in some way.
Okay, I understand. Yes. I had another question. So last year in the town, this doesn't sound like it affects your budget, but it kind of does. But the health costs went way up in the town. And the town pays health benefits based on 20 hours a week. And my recollection was the school department had a lot more part-timers. I think I did ask this last meeting, but I'm wondering if there's like a way, so we're paying more, like you have 2 part-timers, but you're paying full health benefits for both at 20 hours a week. Is there a way to have 1 full-timer at 40 hours a week? Could that be like considered so that we only pay like 1 health cost, so we save like $20-something thousand a year?
Yes, certain jobs could be combined if that was the case. I think a lot of the part-time people, and I can look into this further, are more like 0.8, or which means they're 4 days a week. We don't have any job sharing going on, so some districts would job share. So I would teach 3rd grade with you, we would share the class, and we were both 50%, so we would both be eligible for insurance. We don't do that in Milton. It's not a very good practice for a lot of different reasons. So one of which is you only have 1 health insurance if you have 1 employee. But we can review what part-time folks that we could combine for FY27 to see if we could reduce healthcare costs.
Help the town.
Yep, absolutely.
That'd be great, thanks. Thank you. That's all I have for questions, but I appreciate it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody online? See any hands? Fine.
Nope.
No, all quiet.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Anything else you'd like to add?
Just really appreciate all the time that y'all have given us. We've been in front of you a lot, and so thank you very much. Appreciate all the questions, all the partnerships, and even separate from school stuff. Just really appreciate how much y'all have done this year. 3 town meetings, and still going here with us today. It's a lot, so thank you very much.
Thank you, school.
Julia. Sorry, I do have
Julia.
one question, sorry. This is Julia, hi. It feels like a stupid question, but I'm gonna ask it for everyone's knowledge. What happens if the warrant committee does not agree to transfer this money to the school department? What happens to that $1 million gap?
Yeah, we have no other method of closing the gap. So if the warrant committee, declines to allocate the $1 million, we would, I'm sure John and Katie would go talk to Nick and Amy and see if there's something to do. I know the town has, other rainy day funds. I think those need approval from town meeting, and so potentially a special town meeting would have to be. But that's getting a bit beyond my my level of expertise of exactly. So I think we'd have to go to Amy and Nick and ask them what would it be. But I think that would be the only other strategy.
Thank you.
All good? Well, Julia, thank you for asking that question. I knew it was going to be a lot of work if we said no. But I'd just like to thank the school committee. All the time you spent with us, like you just said. We had a great time with you coming down, your flexibility. Some of the other boards did the same. We had some joint meetings. Thought they worked very well. And I know that everything that you presented here, at least from my shoes, I've seen, we've discussed, and we kind of anticipated, frankly, in the contingent budget, that this was going to be part of that to make sure you broke even for 25. So, but I just wanted to thank you for all the work that you've done. And Superintendent Family, I want to welcome you back to Milton.
Thank you very much.
And everything that you said with the new members of the school committee and the older members of the school committee, extremely refreshing to this finicky board of citizens. So I appreciate that, and I think a big concern of this board, and people can correct me, was some of the hiring practices and just some of the things, and we understood why certain moves had to be made, but I think what you've presented today, specifically in terms of a plan moving forward, I think is great news for us.
Very good.
So
Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank you again, and I'm sure you have a busy summer ahead.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay. I don't know if we have a lot of members online here. Does anybody want to mention anything? Anything you'd like to discuss? Raise, pro, against? Julia?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think just reiterating what you were just sort of alluding to, Tom, which is that to remind us all that it's really nice that this isn't a surprise to us. Of course, it, is unwelcome news, was unwelcome news when we learned about it this winter, most of the whole town. But I really appreciate the school committee and the finance subcommittee's transparency, both with us and the public in general. So, we've known this is coming. And as weird as that is to say, I appreciate that we've known this is coming. And we, I think, have had the opportunity to really understand why, how we got here, the fixes that are in place to hopefully ensure we don't end up here again. So, yeah, just I guess kind of to remind all of us that this is not new information to us, and that's really nice.
Thank you, Julia. Not to interrupt our discussion, but the town administrator just came in the room. And I just didn't know if there's any information he'd like to share with the committee, or is just spectator tonight?
We're here to chat about our own budget when the committee is ready.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Didn't mean to call you out.
No, that's fine. I was upstairs. I got the text that the schools had wrapped, so I came down. There's another meeting I am attending.
Thank you. Does anybody from the committee have any other comments? Brian?
I think it's been said, but no, I appreciate the actions that they've taken. I know last year was quagmire, but I think it's great that they, the last couple slides, I think it's great that they have taken, they seem to be proactively taking actions on things to address it, so I think that's good to see.
Yeah, I know.
And I know they're gonna hire somebody.
Jay has a question.
Hey, Jay, something you'd like to say?
Sure, just quickly, it was said earlier tonight, but I wanted to sort of make sure it was out there that this $1 million, if we travel back in time to like February, this $1 million is $1 million going to go into the special ed reserve account. And now, after all is said and done, we prove that it's going into the schools. So, just emphasizing the point that this is moving from school money to school money. It's not schools dipping into the pocket of the other town departments employing. Just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? No? You want to vote?
Yep.
Okay, anyone online, we're gonna call the roll. Steve?
Yes.
Okay, so I need a motion first, of some type.
Oh, made me nervous. 300, we're gonna make a motion to transfer 300.
The 1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 million.
So make a motion to transfer 1 million to the reserve fund, from the reserve fund for FY '25.
For the school department.
For the school department budget.
Okay. Steve has a motion to transfer $1 million from the reserve fund to the school department budget for fiscal year '25. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second. I'll give it to you, Brian. Can I go to the
No, you can have
Usually hand
it.
that,
No,
so-
but you can have it.
Okay, so I have a second on that motion. I'm going to call the roll for vote for the approval of the $1 million transfer from the reserve fund to the school department. Steve?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Macy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Judith? She's not here. Ron?
Abstain.
Abstain. Vote.
This is to move the 7 and the 300.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Judy?
thank you.
Come on.
Aman?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's it. Transfer complete.
Tom?
Yeah. Oh, Peter. I didn't know you were here.
Thanks. Yes.
Thank you, Peter. My apologies. Okay. 1 abstention. So,
Did you get the vote?
oh, yes, Tom Caldwell. Sorry, I don't usually call the roll. Usually it's the secretary. So we voted to approve the $1 million transfer to the schools. Good luck in the next year. I know you have a lot of work ahead of you. And we wish you all the future success. Thank you very much.
Nice presentation tonight, and a lot of good information. Thank you all.
Thank you. Do you want me to do this?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Have a good summer.
Good luck. Okay, you want to come up? Amy, come on up. You used to come here way more often.
I know.
Then you're like never
I
coming.
like this team effort, yeah.
You like Dave better.
Yeah, I won't comment.
Good evening.
Good evening. The floor is yours. Thank you, Ms. Mon, for being here, and Amy. Thank you also.
Thank you for having us, and I appreciate the ongoing work of the Warrant Committee and all the committee's members' service. I know as we approach the end of the fiscal year, we'd also approach some folks' terms on the Warrant Committee, so it's always a pleasure to come join you for your meetings, and I appreciate working with all of you. So look forward to continuing to work with those who are continuing and appreciate the service of those who are moving on from their time on the committee. But anyway, just wanted to note that. We are here just to provide an overall kind of big picture update on fiscal 25 as we approach fiscal year end next week. We do have some year-end transfers and reserve fund transfer requests that we're working to submit. Typically, the Warrant Committee would designate the chair to approve these as we wrap up and close the books out in the first 15 days of the new fiscal year, so before July 15th. So, you know, defer to the Warrant Committee's perspective on how to manage that. But we also have this year a request to increase a revolving fund spending limit, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But first, in terms of good news, let's say we have bad news, but in terms of the good news on the revenue side, as of today, really, or probably last week to be realistic, we're approaching a projected $3 million above our revenue forecast in terms of revenues this year across property taxes, local receipts, and state aid. That's driven by a couple of key factors, as we've talked about a lot with this committee. Our interest income continues to be strong as interest rates have remained high. We're expecting, we're right now at about $800,000 over our budget on interest income. Motor vehicle excise tax, again, as cars are more expensive, that means excise bills, taxes are more expensive. People are buying and leasing cars at a higher clip. That's, again, about $700,000 above forecast. Building permits, a few $100,000 above forecast. Penalties and interest on taxes is also about $500,000 above forecast. And that's more due to closing out some longer unpaid property taxes through continuing to reach out and have the treasurer continue to work through some of those delinquent property tax owners. So whether through sales, as a home is sale, they come and clear the tax title on that property. So that is generating some additional income as well. So again, overall, projecting about a $3 million above forecast. That is still subject to change. We're not quite there yet, but I'll caveat it with that. But that has been where we like to see things and remain with our conservative budgeting on our revenues, so we don't get too far in front of where those monies are coming in. So that's just, first I just want to explain on the revenue side. In terms of expenditures, a bunch of departments do expect to have turnbacks and underspend their budgets, whether it's the legal budget, police department budget, select board budget, the veterans budget, as well as the DPW setting aside snow and ice. This is largely due to vacancies. Our budget has the Director of Planning and Community Development. That position obviously has been vacant since the end of November. So there are savings in our budget through that. Police Department has been continuing to deal with staff turnover and new employees coming in. Legal, we just haven't spent as much in legal fees as the budget would allow. And DPW does, across its general fund budget, has savings. We're understaffed at DPW currently and have curtailed some spending in DPW. So broadly, there are a number of budgets, as with every year, that have turnbacks. Where we're seeing the pressure this year are the two places we talked about the most, primarily health insurance and the group insurance budget. As we talked about a lot in building out the fiscal 26 budget, we had seen and had experienced enrollment increases, at a $20,000 annual cost for a family plan, 10 people more on a family plan across the 700 employees the town has, that's $200,000 right there. So it doesn't take a lot for these budgets to come under pressure. So health insurance, or employee benefits broadly, we're looking at about a $300,000 overspend in that budget. And then snow and ice, this has been one of our more expensive snow and ice seasons through a number of factors, just the type and frequency of the events that required mobilization, the timing of those events. We had a lot of weekend storms, which means now our employees are automatically starting at either time and a half or potentially double time. And as if you're driving around any city or town in the fall, you see the postage signs, everybody's looking for plow drivers. And that market has gotten more and more competitive, which means every year we have to raise our rates just to keep up with those around us. And when we're surrounded by Boston and Quincy on two sides, it makes it challenging to compete. So our budget was under pressure largely through the snow and ice and the health insurance. A few other places have smaller requests for reserve fund transfers or your appropriations transfer, which includes unemployment, which is a few thousand. And I think the audit department is projected to be over by 1,500. So that is the big picture, is that what we would be looking to do is the schools have requested $1 million from the reserve fund. That leaves $265,000. So what we would expect, what we would be looking for is to take the remainder of the $265,000 and apply that to employee benefits and insurance. And then once everything kind of settles on the fiscal year, we would seek to offset our snow and ice deficit by transferring monies from other departments, including the ones I listed, such as police, legal, select board, wage set aside. So we haven't finalized that list of transfers. So right now, just to put kind of
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Is there a summary of all this?
I haven't prepared it. I will, and I'll distribute it. It's just where everything kind of moving. I have a draft, so I can distribute something to the committee after. So anyways, just to kind of repeat. So we'd be looking for the remainder of the reserve fund to go to employee benefits. And then snow and ice, we're looking at, it's in deficit. So the snow and ice budget is $160,000 a year. We've never spent just $160,000. So this year the total expense was $811,020, which means it's overspent by $651,000. The DPW budget will be underspent, so that will offset a lot of that deficit, but not entirely. We're looking at needing anywhere between $200,000 and $250,000 to pull from other departments to offset the remainder of that snow and ice deficit. And between police, select board, legal, our wage set aside, and other budgets, we have the funding to do so. We would just need ultimately an appropriations transfer, which is approved by both the warrant committee or the warrant committee's designee and the select board. The reserve fund transfer to the employee benefits would just require the warrant committee's approval. So that's kind of the lay of the land in terms of the town. Big picture, revenue is really strong. In terms of expenses, the deficits that we're seeing and have been tracking all along have been health insurance and snow and ice.
Thank you, Nick. Does anybody have a question on the committee on how this works, if you don't know? Just how the turnovers work and how the money is
Basically moving it between.
just reallocated to cover all the other deficits. But is everyone comfortable? Because I'm gonna ask for a vote for a designee to sign. So I just wanna make sure whomever ends up going there has a full understanding of the purpose of the exercise.
I just have a question on the amounts, because I'm not sure, like how much, maybe you don't know yet, but how much of the expenditures over? You said revenues, great, 3 million and a plus.
Correct.
And how much are expenditures total?
So right now,
Would you estimate?
we're projecting the group insurance employee benefits to be over by $300,000. Projecting DPW as a whole, including snow and ice and everything else, to be over by, I'll say, $210,000.
Including snow and ice,
That's inclusive of snow and ice.
which was 651 you said.
Yeah, the snow and ice itself is overspent by 651.
Yeah.
And then there are a couple of two other small ones right now. Unemployment is over by 5,500, and the audit budget is over by 1,500.
Which is not much.
The snow and ice is like interesting, because I think a lot of people think it wasn't a bad winter, you know?
It's ice.
And it really was. Yeah.
A lot of salts, and if you look at the more detailed expenses, the overtime expense is much higher than it normally is, and then a contractor fee is much higher. So that just shows the number of mobilizations and the hours that they had to work and when those calls were being made.
And you mentioned that to us, I remember, like previously. Can I ask you, this is on topic, but not really, how much do they get an hour now? Is it like 70?
Who's that?
Plow drivers. 60?
Our employees are private.
Just like private, if you have to start dipping into the private sector?
It's close to, it can go up to $175, $200 an hour for
Wow.
salt equipped vehicle.
I'm in the wrong line.
I know,
That's unbelievable. Almost 200, it could be $200.
We're talking about when we're contracting with like the Feeney Brothers and the large utilities.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, because you see them going around town, so that's,
Yep,
okay.
And that's the truck and driver.
correct. That's an all-in cost. It's an hourly rate at usually upwards of
nice question.
$100 an hour. And it cost effectively, to pay DPW employees time and a half of double time. It's more cost effective
yeah. And they have
to keep it in-house where possible.
Oh, in-house.
Well, yeah. And they have to drive slow and carefully.
Yeah.
So it could go wild to plow those
We hope
streets.
our contractors are doing that as well.
I'm sure they are. Steve, you had a question?
No, Ron does.
Oh, Ron question.
Hi, thanks for sharing this update, very helpful. I just had a general question about the snow and ice. I feel like this winter reminded me of what winters felt like years ago when it actually snowed. I know we've been really lucky the last 5 winters where it snowed 3 times and it was minimal. Should we expect that the cost should be more in line with what we saw this year as opposed to the other winters where maybe it's a little lighter?
It's a good question. I wish I had an answer. I think I'll just to give you the numbers, and so starting in fiscal 20, the total snow and ice expense was 265, 557, 687, 469, 314, and then this year is the outlier at 811.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
huge.
definitely, last year was more expensive. I think the trend has been lighter, but it's really about, even if we don't get the 24-inch storm, if we're getting 5 4-inch storms that require everybody to mobilize, that can just be even more costly because of the repeated durations of that. If equipment's breaking down, now that costs us money to repair. If every time we have to go get more salt, so it can compound even if they're lighter events. If they're more frequent.
And on the weekends. Right. Yeah.
Our DPW director also explained the icing procedures and why a lot of times the trucks will be out even if it's not snowing. They'll be icing beforehand and all those types of things that could be driving costs that you don't realize that it's not not like it's into the snow, but they can still be out working, so it makes sense.
And staffing remains obviously a key component to helping mitigate some of these costs. Through much of last winter, not only was DPW understaffed, but a number of employees were going through a CDL training program through the winter. A lot of them got their CDL license actually in mid-January. But now, they got their license, they passed the tests, but it doesn't mean they're ready to go out and start driving, big vehicles for 12 hours at a time. So, as we continue to, develop our workforce, hopefully retain that talent, retain those licensed individuals, we'll be in a better position at the start of next winter than we were at the start of this winter.
Got it, thank you.
I have a question on how some stuff works. So you want to, I apologize, but you want to move money, which I get, so you're $3 million greater in revenues. You're roughly $500,000 higher in expenditures, which is $2.5 million over, right? So what do you do with that $2.5 million? Like, we just had an override. Do you go back and say, well, we're not going to raise property taxes this much this year, and we're going to give everybody a little bit of a break?
No,
so
you're
we're within budget.
If it were possible to just say we're over on our revenue, so we're okay, like a business might, that would be great. But unfortunately, we can't. That revenue can't be spent unless it's appropriated by town meeting. So when we set the budget, we set appropriations are tied to our revenue projections. So what we're saying is, here's good news that we can't do anything about quite yet in terms of the revenues. This will start to form the basis for free cash that's certified in the fall of this year for next year. So we'll take that revenue as the first factor in free cash. In order to account for deficits in various accounts on our approved budgets, we have to make up within what has been appropriated and approved by town meeting. So if everybody spent all of their budget and we had $0 turnbacks on the dollar, then what would form the basis of free cash is just our revenues over what was budgeted. However, for this year, even though we're going to have some deficits in some accounts, we still expect to spend less than was appropriated. So we're going to take all of our revenue, we're going to add in all of our savings from our fiscal 25 budgets, and then that'll start to form the basis of free cash. So I probably did a little more detail there. I was talking about how the year closes out, but for purposes of how the budget is managed is we can only spend what has been appropriated by town meeting, even if our revenues look good. So what?
That I understand.
Yep.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, please.
I meant, at what point, if you say that accumulates, at what point would you say, well, we don't need to raise property taxes so much this year?
Sure.
Is that doable? Is that ever happen? Is that ever going to happen?
Well, I think, so we just had, what did we end the year with? And what was free cash this year? 4.4?
I believe so.
Yeah, so we had 4.4 in free cash at the end of fiscal 24. But because it wasn't sustainable, we went ahead with, the override and the increases to property taxes. So while this is good and it's good to have these numbers, it's important to also to think about how many of them are one-time and not sustainable. Like penalties and interests, that's $500,000 over budget because we had a bunch of delinquent taxpayers that we've caught up on. Interest income, it's been high the last couple of years, but interest rates crash, that money's gone, so now we can't really count on that. So I wouldn't want to increase our revenue estimate to the $1.3 million that we brought in, because who's to say where interest rates will be. Some of them are more sustainable than others. Motor vehicle excise tax, it'll go down, but it won't necessarily plummet. But again, trying to be conservative. So where we can revise those revenue forecasts as we move forward to fiscal 27, we will. But in terms of foregoing property tax increases, I wouldn't see that as very likely.
Thank you.
You mentioned unemployment. Is that the money everyone pays just to have unemployment available if you need it? Or did
No,
you actually...
we're not part of the unemployment insurance system, so municipalities pay for claims directly.
Directly?
Yeah, so if that amount is the amount of claims that we paid out this year.
How did we have those claims?
If positions are not funded, employees are let go through mutual, agreement to separate. there might be different occasions where that comes up. So if an employee files a claim and it's valid, then we owe that throughout the year.
Would you say your experience has been that's been somewhat level, or does it fluctuate a lot?
It's been typically around where we appropriate it, maybe a little bit over where we appropriate it.
Okay.
If I'm missing.
Historically, we've kept it around 100,000. I have a history somewhere, but it's hard to predict. I think during COVID it was a little bit different.
Right, everything was correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really hard to predict. So that's one of those that if it does go over and we can't transfer from another department, we would seek a reserve fund transfer for, because it's definitely one that's unanticipated, extraordinary.
I didn't realize there was that much, I'll just use the word turnover in employment in the.
So if you think about it, the 100,000 compared to the amount of wages in the overall budget isn't very much.
Very much, after
Yeah,
all.
you know, like if 80% of the school's budget or the town's budget is salaries, whatever that percentage is, 100,000 isn't a lot of people.
Okay, I'm understanding now.
Yeah, it's
Thank
not
you.
a ton of people.
It just seems like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a big number.
It
Well,
is, but
big
if
number
you-
to me.
Yeah.
I'd
But
love
in
to have
an
that
organization
number
with
in my bank.
700 plus employees, that's really not. If I look at a bill, it could possibly be, if I saw 10 to 15 people on there, that would be really high.
Okay, thank you.
And it fluctuates, like, once we get through the bumps of the beginning of the school year and that kind of stuff, it kind of, the staff gets in place and.
Thank you.
Anybody have any further questions from Nick and Amy concerning the year-end transfers? Understand how it works? Anything you'd like to add that maybe you think you should know, or?
No?
Can I add?
Yeah, please.
Well, so Nick mentioned that there'll be some transfers from some town departments to other town departments, but there will also be transfers within departments, because the way the money is appropriated is how you see it in the town meeting warrant. So if a department has a line for salary and wages and a line for general, we can manage within those two. So if, for example, there's a vacancy in salary and wages and general goes over, we have to request a year-end transfer to go from salary and wages down to general or vice versa. So there'll be, there'll be a few of those that will also come, that we'll be seeking approval for. Net overall on that budget, it's zero, but it's just more of a housekeeping matter.
Makes sense.
Does anybody have questions to what Amy just spoke about, the interdepartmental transfers? Anybody online? Yeah, okay. Thank you Amy, for mentioning that. I don't think we have any other questions.
Okay. The other item that we wanted to come down about was, we have a number of revolving funds that are approved with expenditure limits each year. The department or board or committee that handles those revolving funds has an expenditure limit that they can't go above in that fiscal year without the approval of the warrant committee and the select board. So in addition to the reserve fund transfer approval designee, the year-end appropriation transfer designee, we'd also request that somebody be designated to approve an increase for the revolving fund expenditure limit for our revolving fund related to the electric vehicle chargers.
The solar
The solar.
and energy conservation, that's under the consolidated facilities, that was approved at the May 2017 annual town meeting.
The expenditure limit on that is $10,000. We bring in revenue well over that. The department is expecting to land closer to the $15,000 range, but we're requesting an approval to increase that for this year, to close out this year, and then we'll revisit that, where that expenditure limit should be going forward for next year's town meeting. But that would be a one-year increase only allowed for fiscal '25.
And that's because of electric vehicle increased use.
Correct.
In the town.
And electricity costs have increased.
Thank you.
And those funds are used at different energy conservation efforts at the town buildings. So the Consolidated Facilities Director might choose to do some improvements to a building that are related to energy efficiency, and we can use those funds from that revolving fund. So he has had more than anticipated, therefore asking for the increase in the limit for this year, only for '25, fiscal '25.
Of just $5,000.
It would be 10,000.
We're asking for for an increase from 10,000 to 20,000 to protect us. We think it'll come in at around 15 or so. So,
Okay.
just to be safe.
So what is the net
And you leave that extra, say you
Asking for
used
20,
18.
expected to come in at 15.
So you would leave the 2,000 in that revolving fund for future use?
Correct. It'll stay in the fund. Yep. Anything that's not spent stays in these funds specifically.
But what we are asking for isn't to put money or anything. The money's already in there. It's just for us to allow them to spend more than they're limited. Otherwise, I have a deficit in there.
It's like a credit card.
Yeah, you don't have to, if you approve the 20, it doesn't mean he's gonna spend up to that limit.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Can I ask a related question? Milton has a pretty, I think, pretty good sustainability committee. And they have a lot of great ideas, but I don't get involved in it. But do they ever get involved with the town, like on things with the buildings or anything? I meant to ask this previously, but.
Are you referring to Sustainable Milton?
Yes.
So they're a separate, non-town body.
It was a town committee.
There's a climate action planning committee, of which a couple of those folks are involved in, but Sustainable Milton is a separate, I think they're even organized as a 501c3.
No, that's not.
Okay.
I meant the town committee. That
Okay.
must be the climate change.
So the Climate Action Planning Committee, yes, they have a draft report of what they're looking for us to focus on and related to town buildings. So that's been part of kind of our dialogue as we're mapping out investments over the next few years.
Okay. And like, do they do the Energy Star program? Do they recommend that? Do you know?
We have taken advantage, we've done a lot of green community. The big grant program for us is Green Communities, which is funded through the state. Mass Save has some programs for municipalities. A lot of their electric vehicle programs have kind of phased out. We did apply and partnered with Randolph through a Mass Save Energy Manager program. So we have received a 3-year grant with the town of Randolph to split an energy manager for 3 years, funded through Mass Save. So that will help, again, focus our efforts around these issues.
Thank you.
It's a little unrelated, but when you said the town of Randolph, so I'm kind of going off-road for a second, is that, do you anticipate, because we shared a veterans agent with Randolph, do you anticipate doing that again as soon as you and Milton and Randolph find a way to do that?
For a veterans district, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, we are still, our veterans district is still up and active. It's still, and the new veterans service officer, a vet named Alex Ortiz, starts on July 7th.
Okay.
In Randolph and Milton. So he was finishing a law degree, so we made the hire, I want to say at the end of May.
Okay.
But he'll be starting, he graduated at the end of June, so he'll be starting in July. And we'll, be sure to introduce him around town. And he'll be at the COA in that office there.
Or in the closet?
In the space at the COA.
Okay.
Anything else?
Okay. Any questions as to the reserve fund transfer request for town departments or approval of the revolving funds limit increase? Do you want to vote? Okay. Can I have can someone give me a motion for the reserve fund transfer request for a proxy to go in my place and sign over the year-end transfers?
I move as exactly what you just said.
Okay. And would anybody like to nominate anybody?
Well, I'll second your motion then.
Thank you.
So I'm looking for nominations to go in my place, to be my proxy, to go up and meet with me and Amy at Town Hall in the Cronin Room.
When is it?
July
15,
Fif-
probably.
the last minute of the last.
9 a.m. So you're gonna have to make some time in the morning to meet with Amy and Nick,
And you have to sign your own name,
and you're gonna sign your name.
and that you own it. No.
Yeah,
Do you want me to just explain how we did it last year?
sure.
So we had everything ready to go, all the forms. We put together a list summarizing exactly what each one represented. We sat down at the time, there was a designee from the warrant committee that would sign off. We invited anybody from the warrant committee that wanted to come, that was interested, and we sat in the Cronin and we went through them one by one and approved them one by one. Probably took an hour and a half, maybe most, not a
even
lot.
an hour, I would say.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I'll have it all organized and summarized so that it's easy to understand. You'll have one list that summarizes everything, and then just each one will have an individual form that just needs a signature.
On the 15th, you said?
Well,
What day of the
any
week is the
time
15th?
between July 1st and July 15th in that 2-week period.
Yeah, that's the last possible day that it can be approved by Mass General laws, and I just say the 15th because I have to close the books and know what the exact numbers are in order to put it all together. So in theory, you probably don't need to decide on the day right now, but it would be on or around no later than the 15th of July.
So committee, we're gonna need two motions. A motion to, I guess, approve the reserve fund transfer request for town departments, and then a proxy to go up and sign. So do I have a motion for reserve fund transfer request approval for town departments?
I did that motion.
You did? You have a second? Seconded?
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna go through the roll for a vote?
Sure.
Okay. Steve?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jay said yes.
Am I on mute? I'm sorry. I meant to say yes.
Casey?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Peter? Ryan?
Yes.
Aman?
Yes.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Judith?
Yes.
Tom Caldwell, yes. Unanimous. Would anybody like to nominate to go up to Town Hall? They have a great breakfast spread up there. Omelet bar.
Not this year.
Not this year. I like that.
They have extra money,
Our
so they can
secretary
afford.
on the spot, but
Yeah, I don't
our
know.
secretary is our elected officer.
I'll do it.
You're lat. Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay, well, I have it. Jay Fundling nominates Stephen Ryan, Secretary of the 2025 Warrant Committee, 2024-25 Warrant
I
Committee.
expect scones and omelets.
Any,
Oh,
second.
mimosas, somebody, if you're having mimosas, somebody should.
Macy just seconded the motion to appoint Stephen Rhines. We're going to go through the roll. I don't think you can vote.
No, I'll abstain, I guess.
Abstain from Steve. Jay.
Yes.
Thank you, Jay. Macy.
Yes.
Julia.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Aman.
Yes.
Ron.
I guess so, yes.
Ron, I'm shocked. Judith.
Yes.
And Tom, yes, unanimous. Steve, you're our guy. So, Amy,
you,
can you
Practice your signatures.
John Hank.
Figure out a time.
It has to be in cursive, right?
Palmer method.
Oh, boy.
You do an X.
Yeah.
Okay, so reserve fund, the transfers are approved, you're approved. Now we just have to move on to approval of the revolving fund spending limit increase for the electric vehicle charging stations behind Town Hall.
And maybe some other
written there?
minor things too, right?
No, that's right.
Yeah, what's
That's
the-
all of that.
What's the agenda?
That's everything.
Go
I have an,
10 to 20, right?
Yeah.
This
Ms.
is-
Milano, I have an email from you, would that be the appropriate,
You looking for like the verbiage?
just the verbiage?
To increase the spending limit for the revolving fund for consolidated facilities from 10,000 to 20,000
What was
For
previous?
environmental things
for energy conservation.
and energy, thank you.
Okay, as to that verbiage language stated by the town administrator,
I'll make a
Anyone wanna make that
in
motion?
Exact verbiage that we just heard.
you want to second it?
Second.
Seconded by Steve. I'm going to call the roll as to that transfer. Steve?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Macy?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Aman?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Judith?
Yes.
Tom, yes. Unanimous. Okay. Okay, I think that's it.
It's been quite a year.
Been quite a year.
And I apologize for my part in
It's
it.
been, it's been quite a 3 years. I don't think there's been a collection of
Yeah, that's-
decisions that we've had to make, at least this committee, which means you and everyone else. But Nick, I want to say this, I may have said this to you before, but as a member of the Warrant Committee, and especially now as chair, I really want to thank you so much, and Amy, for all the help. And when I said it at town meeting, I'm so sincere. You really gave us guidance, you were there for advice, you put up with us, and you come down here at a moment's notice when I call. It's so appreciated. You know, I appreciate it as the chair, and I know everyone here does too. So thank you for all that you do for Milton, Nick.
Yep, I second that.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, but that's what we're here for. And the volunteer hours that you folks put in, it doesn't go unrecognized. And we appreciate it because we wouldn't be able to get this work done without the work you put in. So thank you.
And thank you, Amy, for everything you do. Everything for the town, the budget, previous roles, schools, everything. Thank you.
Have a good summer, both of you.
I know. Yeah.
You will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Amy, I'll give this piece of paper to you. This is just the reserve fund.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. That was the reserve fund transfer to the school department, the paperwork that Amy needed, I had to sign. Okay, Warrant Committee. Thank you, Nick. Everyone stay
you,
cool.
Nick.
We have minutes to approve.
Okay.
We have minutes to approve, and I said 9 o'clock.
We'll get there.
Okay, so Karen sent a series of minutes.
Good. Starting on Friday.
See you on Friday.
She sent 5 on Friday, and then,
She sent
5 yesterday.
some on Monday.
yep, oh, she did? I was on Monday. Yeah, yesterday, because today's Tuesday, right? Yeah. She sent 5 yesterday, and then she sent 5 on Friday.
Yes.
So we have 10, right? I counted 10.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Okay, so 6:20. This is an email from 6:20 where she sent minutes, and please correct me if I'm wrong, from July 9th, August 26th, September 16th, October 21st, and October 28th.
Of 24.
All of 24, yes, thank you,
Thank
Judy.
you.
All of this. Anybody have any questions or concern about these 5 sets of minutes from July to the end of October?
No.
I don't have any, I didn't have any issues with them.
No.
So I'd like to do what I did last time, approve these in a block, if there's no one objects to it. The email dated, I'll make the motion as the chair, is Friday, to approve minutes from July 9th, 2024, August 26th, 2024, September 16th, 2024, 10/21/24, and 10/28/24. Do I have a second?
Second.
Judy, second. I'm going to call the roll as to those minutes. Steve?
Yes.
Jay?
I think he dropped.
I'll come back to Jay. Macy?
Yes.
Julia?
Abstain.
Abstain? Peter?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Brian?
Yes.
Aman?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Judith?
Yes.
Tom, yes. The motion carries. The minutes from July to October 2024, the Warrant Committee have been approved. Second set of minutes. These would be from, again, in Friday. I'm sorry.
Yep, that's Friday.
These are the Monday ones, right? Starting on October 30th?
Yes, I have to just find them. Yes. Okay, so we received, again, from the secretary, the Warrant Committee Clerk Karen Bosworth, minutes on Monday, July 23rd via email. As Macy indicated, October 30th, 2024, November 13th, 2024, January 8th, 2025, 1/13/2025, and 1/15/2025. Wow, that was a busy week. So that, again, another 5 sets of minutes covering our meeting dates from October 30 through 1/15/25. I will again make a motion as chair to approve these blocks of 5 minutes from 10:30, 24, 11/13/24, 1/8/25, 1/13/25, and 1/15/25. Do I have a second?
Second.
Macy. We call the roll. Steve?
Yes.
Jay?
I think he dropped.
Macy?
Yes.
Julia?
Abstain.
Abstain. Peter?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Aman?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Judith?
Yes.
Tom is a yes. Okay. Hey, there we go.
No Wi-Fi down here.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have anything you want to talk about?
What's everyone doing for summer?
It's the last meeting.
I was just being
Vacation.
silly. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Where are you going?
Is this it? I'm good.
This is it. This will be, okay, everybody, even though it's online, this will be our last meeting. This until June 30th for the Warrant Committee, 24-25, unless by some type of emergency we're called back for whatever, I don't know. I highly doubt it, and it probably will not happen. But remember, we sit through the 30th. If you've reapplied, you'll be contacted by the moderator at some point, and you'll have to go through the whole swearing-in ceremony with our new moderator, Liz Dillon, filling out the paperwork, Sue Galvin, and all that stuff. So,
I'd like to say something.
sure, Judy. Judy, you're a third-year senior member. Please.
It's just been a really nice year. I've enjoyed meeting new people, reconnecting with others, and I thought we had a very vibrant Warrant Committee this year. A lot of good discussion and debate, and we voted well, I believe, on so many issues. To the town at large that may be listening to me, it does seem that I'm going to put pat on the back to the Warrant Committee, but we do put in a tremendous amount of hours in the endeavor of the warrant and the town issues. And I saw you, Tom, on a Connect Milton. No, can I say this?
Yeah, of course.
Connect Milton, and because all the departments were describing what they do, the committees, and if you want to get involved. And I could hear somebody in the audience gasp when you said, well, yeah, at least 100 hours a year. And I could hear it like, a year? But I think that it does come down to that, because it isn't just sitting at the table or on Zoom, if that's what you had to do, if you're too fellow. And it's the research that you do to be prepared for the presentations, the follow-ups you do when you hear presentations. Did I hear this right? Going to the various department heads to confirm. Make sure you understand exactly what you're voting on. And I thought it was a good year. Sure. So, to all my committee friends, thanks for the good role.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Julia?
Yeah, just echoing what Judy said, this was a grueling year in terms of our schedule, but I nearly enjoyed every minute.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate this group. I've learned a lot from all of you. And I just specifically wanted to say thank you to Tom, our fearless leader, who I think has chaired this committee with fairness and respect. And I really appreciate your leadership and what an active role you took in a crazy busy year with lots of coordinating amongst everyone and their mother. So just want to give you a special shout out, because all the work you particularly put in has not gone unnoticed. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Julia. That's really nice. No, thank you, everybody. And to what Julia said and Judy, this was really a good year. It's a different year. I thought we all got along well. We disagreed, which we have to and we should do. But I really like the group. I appreciate you putting up with me, the amount of time, the meetings, some of the things we did, some of the things we wanted to do that I didn't get to. It really was a lot this year. I mean, I don't know, I found that this year was, maybe we went and met just as much in the earlier years, but I found maybe just because of the seat I was sitting in. But I appreciate everybody. And thank you.
The budget was harder this year because we had to look at two different scenarios.
Yeah.
Without any, it's a lot easier if you're only looking at one playbook
At one,
instead of looking at two playbooks that you have no control over.
Yeah.
And so it was extra. I think there were some extras.
It was extra meeting, but I just want to say this, I really appreciate you, and I know, especially from after the town meetings, people who came up to me and thanked me and thanked you all through me, and some even said, we didn't really agree with you, but we can't argue with your reasoning and the work that you put in, and it was a great just hearing some of those accolades, for all of you, and the town appreciates it. And this is a very unique board in Massachusetts. Only a few towns have them, and I've spoken to some other people I know in other towns, and they said we should have a committee like that too, that kind of goes over everything, unelected citizens, and kind of give their first take to town meeting what they think about these things. So, but I guess the biggest thing is thank you for all putting your hat in the ring and getting appointed and being here every night. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tom.
If no one else has anything more to say,
Oh, no, don't.
I'm going to say, thank you, Milton. Thank you, Warrant Committee. Have a great summer.
Make a motion
Motion?
To adjourn.
to adjourn.
Seconded? All in favor? Aye.
Have a good summer, everybody.
Have a good summer, everybody.
Take care.